Yeah, I heard them pretty good, and with the headphones, because there's a local motor inverter that a neighbor has on their furnace, and when that comes on, it generates S9, well, S7 white noise here. So he was making it over the S9 white noise, and then the furnace just went off now, so we got beautifully low noise conditions at the moment. Haha. So I can go one more round here if you guys are still copying. And I think you said it was Marco. Take it away, Marco. I've been in Laurel, Maryland at the Howard Johnson Hotel, which is probably long gone. This is WA2OFC.
Go ahead, Marco.
Well, okay. Yeah, I wasn't really camping. At the end, he was just starting to come up just a little bit. But anyway, yeah, I actually have an aircraft KX2 that runs AM, and that doesn't sound too bad. That's a real genuine self-contained transceiver. I think that's the smallest transceiver in the world as far as multi-band. You know, it's 80 through, or actually 160 through 10, and it also does FM and AM, and it is completely self-contained, including the battery, and it'll put out about 12 watts. On its internal battery. I have the KX3 as well, which covers 6 and 2 as well, but the battery arrangement on that one is that I do like to do sometimes I like self-contained QRP, where the radio and the battery and everything is all together, including an antenna tuner. Essentially walkabout QRP, I guess is what I call it. I have a number of antennas that I use. I have actually a little loop, antenna magnetic loop, and it actually doesn't work too bad. And then the little MFJ multiband. If you're going to use the one secret to walkabout HF QRP, you've got to have a counterpoise, you've got to drag a little wire behind you. It really makes a huge difference, especially on any band from turn. From turn it really doesn't seem to make, but on any other band you really got to have that if you want to get out. I do have a collection of military backpack radios as well as several aircraft. I have a PRC 515, which is a Collins portable from the 70s, with one modern addition that the people in Serbia came up with, because I guess that's who ended up with them when they lost the contract to Hughes. And if you put the modern head on it, then you get memories and split operation, stuff like that. It was originally a synthesized radio. Even in the 70s, it had these wheels that you set. I think it was the first, one of the first synthesized radios. I actually worked with the guy who designed the synthesizer for it. So anyway, back to you, Paul, N5ACR.
N5ACR with WA2OFC, WA3VJB. Yeah, very good, Marco. That's kind of cool. Those little thumb wheel frequency selections remind me of what I've got here on the ITT McKay. It's a commercial shipping receiver from 1980. And it's got these thumb wheel switches for frequency selection that very closely resemble the old HW2036 Heathkit, the 2-meter rig. That was the first time I saw them. And when this receiver kind of followed me home, I hearkened back to that FM rig And Jim, I meant to comment on your time at General Electric Appliance Division in Columbia, Maryland. Yeah, that's right next door to Laurel, and I think a lot of it has been decommissioned. One of our neighbors, when we lived in Howard County, worked there as well, and I think they outsourced a lot of that appliance manufacturing to other countries, probably Mexico or wherever, and there's not much left of the GE appliance production complex that was there off of 175 in Columbia. And the Howard Johnson's right there on Route 1, I think that was still there right into the 90s. I remember that. Route 1 is a divided highway at that point, with the retail shopping and the motel in between the northbound and southbound lanes. And the radio station that I used to work at is right where 197 and Route 1 intersect, very close to about a quarter mile from there. If you remember the high-rise, I used to live at Stewart Towers, which is almost next to the property that used to be a golf course there. Now it's, I think, a Home Depot and a tennis court or something like that. And the station no longer has its studio facility at the location. It's just a transmitter site now. It's kind of run down. And they actually beam in by microwave the studio programming to that transmitter site. That's where it all began in the late 1970s for myself. Fond memories of Laurel. Marco, on the KX series Elecraft, very good. I had corresponded with one of the co-founders of Elecraft to thank him for adding AM. I believe it was to the KX3. I thought perhaps it was because he was aware of the AM activity on HF among us. But he said in reality it was a matter of getting requests from people who use that radio for international shortwave listening just as a receiver. And they wished to have AM as among the modes on receive. And if it's becoming used on AM transmit, well, so much the better, he told me. He was quite friendly, quite cordial, and accepted my appreciation for it having been added to that, and perhaps on future products to become aware of those of us here on this part of the hobby. So yeah, gentlemen, let me catch you later. The G76 sounds fine, Marco. Glad you shook it out and on the air. Maybe I'll encounter you on the local 2-meter repeater that serves the area. 147.135 is in Columbia. I used to know the trustee, K3CUJ, who used to be one of the Howard County commissioners. He was the guy who you went to when you needed bond after a weekend of partying. And that's K3CUJ. Long gone, but the club took his call letters on. Jim, I'm going to pass it back to you for a final. I'll listen through yours, Marco. If either of you guys want to hear how it sounds, I've been rolling an air check recording. Just send me an email. My call letter's at yahoo.com, and I'll mail you off the YouTube link that I'll upload in a little bit. WA2OFC near Buffalo with N5ACR, Greater Laurel, Maryland. This is Annapolis Radio, WA3VJB. Go ahead, Jim. See you later.
Okay, Paul, very good. Yeah, the Appliance Park in Columbia was the second super modernized plant. Their original plant complex is at Appliance Park number 1. And within the last 5 years, they have brought appliance manufacturing back to Louisville, some of their washers and stuff. So they actually brought some manufacturing back to the original Appliance Park. And the one in Columbia, I was there about 10 years ago. I was working in that area. I was working a little south of there on a big electronic drive startup. And I took a ride up to Columbia there, and that's now like a warehouse complex, a distribution place. There's a lot of businesses in there. And the streets have all kinds of cool names, you know, like the electrical pioneers, you know, all the streets are marked, named for them. And it was a much more modernized plant than the one in Louisville. Louisville is back in operation. And in Louisville, there's like a highway that goes through the center of all these buildings. and each building was making a different appliance. Like one was for refrigerators, one for automatic washers. It was a really huge complex. I've been there also. And I went to real narrow band receive for Marco, and I heard him really good with narrow, cutting the bandwidth way down. Well, you guys have a great afternoon, Paul and Marco. This is WA2OFC, and I'll check that YouTube audio out. This is the first try on this backup TS2000. This is WA2OFC.
Yeah, okay, I think you turned it over to the N5ACR. A couple times I was able to hear. Anyway, very good, Paul. Well, I actually hang out on the 146.835. That's the Goddard Amateur Radio Club. I work at NASA. Actually, the president of that of the club, of the NASA Goddard Radio Club, and we have a repeater that does not require PL on 146.835. And actually, as we speak, there's a new net going. But I definitely can get on the 135. I actually live right off of 95 on High Ridge Road, and I have a tower, which I guess you can see from the road. It's going south, 95. And I think that station you're talking about is 900 AM. It's all Spanish language now. If that's the same station, that's an AM. It's somewhere in that area that you mentioned there. I didn't know that the programming was all coming from somewhere else, but I do speak Spanish as well. Occasionally I'll take a listen to that station. In the daytime, it puts a pretty strong signal in here. I'm not that far from it. I'm just off of Route 216, just barely in Howard County. So I'm in the part of Laurel that's in Howard County on High Ridge Road, some of the highest ground around here, which works out quite good. And just got my rotor back. I recently got some satellite tracking going on my array, and I had the brake timing set wrong and destroyed the rotor. So I got another one, got it up there. So I'll be back on the satellites. Do enjoy the space station I have a repeater that's pretty much on all the time, and when it passes over, you can talk to people on it. And when the astronaut's in the right mood, he'll get on there and talk to people as he passes over. And so you go up on VHF 145, 900, and you try and you listen on 437.8. Yeah, 437.8. And you need a 67 PL. But it's a lot of fun. And so as of tomorrow, I'll be back up on there. I got my rotor back. I got it up there yesterday. I just need to calibrate the heading and all that on it, and I'll be ready to go again. N5ACR 73.
Okay, Marco. Yeah, I guess that's WA3NAN that you're the president of. I used to enjoy listening to the retransmitted space shuttle communications on their, I guess it's their repeater, 835. And I worked KW0ORE on there. Not ON, W5LPL, but ORE I worked on there, too. And it seems like a while ago. Hey, you're quite the renaissance man there, going from a G76 on AM to the military radios that you mentioned, to satellite communications, to being involved as president of the NASA Goddard Amateur Radio Club. Man, you got it all covered. Very good for you. And you live on a hill. So you got a station at home besides. Good for you. I'll look over that way the next time I'm traveling out there. We're almost neighbors. I'm over in Anne Arundel County. But I grew up out in Howard County in West Friendship. Still have that as the licensed station location. And yes, good old 900 LMD. WLMD stood for Laurel, Maryland. And in those days when I worked there, it was a kilowatt day timer. So at sunset, I was the news guy, and they had a remote studio at Columbia Mall, probably not far from where Jim was working at Appliance Park. Columbia Mall had a little dead end where the Radio Shack was, or Shadio Rack as we call it. And right across from there was what we called the Fish Bowl. It was an orange painted remote studio, microwave 950 megahertz link on the top of what then was the Hochschild Kohn department store. And it aimed from Columbia back to Laurel at the transmitter site where I was. So in order not to have an engineer on duty, when the DJ at Columbia Mall would end his broadcast day, I would finish a newscast and then go turn the transmitter off. And it was sometime after that that I could load up my Collins 32V2 transmitter into Tower 2 of that array and have some fun and games on 75. We'll save that story for another time. See you guys later. Jim, yes, I'll send you that link. Marco, yours as well. If you got an email address on QRZ.com, I'll use that address. Otherwise, I'll look you up on the NAN page there and figure out how to get that link to you as well, so you can hear how the G76 was doing. Doing fine. N5ACR signed, WA2OFC having signed. This is Annapolis Radio. See you guys later. WA3VJB.